As y'all know, ever since the Gran Turismo 6 days, and especially becoming important in Gran Turismo Sport closed beta and onward, I've always said that the Gran Turismo community is what makes the Gran Turismo games mostly ahead of a lot of the other racing simulators. Obviously, there's stuff the Gran Turismo 6 and Sport doesn't have that other racing simulators do have, but just statistically, the Gran Turismo community is bigger than all the others, and at least in my opinion, is still the best of all the other games. And I say it's bigger than all the others in the sense of racing simulators. Just statistically, Gran Turismo sells more than the other racing simulators. Even GT Sport, which has sold 3 point something million copies-ish, is still more than the others that are rivals to it. Assetto Corsa, Project Cars 2, iRacing, etc. And that definitely helps the Gran Turismo community, but looking at it in other spectrums, I've played some of the video games with the biggest communities there are. I played Grand Theft Auto 5 since it came out pretty much in 2013. I played Fortnite, and I've watched some of those videos with different parts of the community. And both of those are about as big as you're going to get. And they also still seem sort of kind of worse in aspects than the Gran Turismo community. Big helps in terms of having enough people to actually do events and all that and make the game continuously fun. Gran Turismo has enough to do that. But, to an extent, once a video game gets so big, it's impossible to control the entire community. Maybe the best way to put it would be like in history, how Rome had their empire at one point was doing perfectly fine and everything was going pretty much well with that and they were gaining a lot of power quickly. But then eventually they just got too big to control everyone and then they just kind of died down to not really nothing, but not nearly a world power. I mean, Italy still exists, obviously, but they're not what they used to be. And, I mean, I'm not doing like a prediction conspiracy thing saying that's what's going to happen to Fortnite or that's what sort of happened with Grand Theft Auto 5 or whatever. I'm doing this mainly to just say that I feel like the Gran Turismo community is at a point in which it's thriving, really. I know the sales of the games in general are lower, but it seems like the community is only getting better and better. Also, another reason I made this video, and y'all probably have kind of figured this out from the very beginning, is there's been someone who's pretty prominent in the Gran Turismo community, especially lately, who has been affected negatively by the community, I guess, put it like that. I'm not going to go too much into details with that, because that's not really my own thing. I'm not all that much involved with that. I'm just making this video more as a positive. Because, as y'all can see here, there's a whole heck of a heap of parts of the community there, and this is just one aspect of one part of the Gran Turismo community. There's teams in the Gran Turismo community, which is what I'm showing here, and then there's different, like, racing leagues and all that. There's a lot of stuff there that if there's one part of the community you're not liking so much or you're not as well liked in, there's others in which you can go to that can make it better. I'm not really going to say which one's better or worse because, well, y'all know what I would say there. It's kind of obvious. I think y'all can also tell which one I purposely put first. Yeah, maybe y'all can tell that very slightly without me giving any hint of it whatsoever. But anyway, moving on. I'm honestly fine with all of the teams that I've at least raced against in Gran Turismo. Which I'd say to an extent is all these teams. And I tried to look for some others as well. Like when I do NASCAR, I race against the RPM guys quite a bit. When I occasionally get in the top 24 Superstars race, I see some of the TRL guys. But for whatever reason, I couldn't find either of their logos. But I think if you're involved in that type of racing, you've definitely heard of both of them. If you're more on the serious type of racing and one of the better drivers out there, you've probably seen and heard of TRL. And then if you're more on the NASCAR aspect of it, or as close as this game can get, you probably heard of RPM. So I couldn't find either of those logos, so I think y'all still know those teams as well. And this is just what I could find going off of the page on the GT Sport Discovery thing, and that in popularity only goes down to 20 likes per thing, so that means there's a whole heck of a heap more teams out there as well. And the reason that I brought this up with the teams is not just to show how much of a variety Gran Turismo has, it's to show that it seems like everything's kind of going smoother than it did 5 or so years ago. Technically, 5 or so years ago, the Gran Turismo community was also bigger just because the games were selling better back then. Let's just say it's between 2010 and 2013, because this was when it was more of an issue, at least for me. It seems like back then, a lot of the teams that weren't the big, major teams that were just way faster than the rest, like the TRLs, or in the NASCAR game like RPM or something like that, or just big in terms of numbers like GG Planet, there are some smaller teams that were sort of kind of taking advantage of people. I mentioned Mach 1 in many a video as well, but there were some others out there too that kind of got a bad name out there and sort of looked bad on Gran Turismo's legacy as a whole. Because some of those drivers were actually fast enough to be looked at, but also weren't exactly the cleanest. But it seems like now, in the last year or two, it's gotten a lot better. And a lot of the teams back then that were kind of doing that have kind of parted ways. I can't really say if they just straight up don't exist anymore. I don't really know, but at least I haven't necessarily seen them around. Maybe some of their drivers joined other teams and learned better ways and all that. And it seems like one of the ways that has happened to improve the overall behavior of the teams in Gran Turismo is it seems like some of the new teams that have popped up have been really positive for the community. One of the things that I've noticed recently, which this is probably the only team I'm going to go into specifics with, is it seems like in the last month or two, there's been this team that's kind of started up and got way popular way quick. And they seem to have as much driver talent as TRL on paper. Like the most famous team in the multiple racing game that's won actual like real world championships and stuff. That's always a good thing. When you can have a lot of the good drivers on the same team helping each other get better, there's really no negative to that. I mean, in a way, you could kind of think of it as a monopoly, but I mean, for Jiminy Cricket's sakes, it's a racing game that can supposedly get you to be a real race car driver. I don't really see it being a bad thing of people who have a chance of becoming those real race car drivers helping each other out. It's just going to make the talent level better for those who do become real race car drivers. That's probably going to be a good thing in pretty much all aspects. And then there's been other teams out there, once again, I'm not going to go into specifics with, because that's part of the reason I made this video, wink, wink, that have gotten really big really quick, but aren't really necessarily made for only the fastest drivers in the world. They have some, but they're not necessarily made for that. And then those teams have just grown from overall being well kept, is probably the best way to put it. They're on YouTube. Their main people are well known and nice, and just overall are well with keeping the team up, like in terms of doing the graphics for the teams and doing like events that involve the teams in them and all that. And that doesn't help as much in terms of like getting ready for best of the best, but that does actually make the game as a whole still look better, even though a lot of those drivers aren't necessarily seen to the public eye, like on those live reports and all that. They are racing in the public eye with such things as YouTube and things like that, which is actually why I put the YouTube logo on here. Because YouTube as itself is about as strong of a team as there is in Gran Turismo. One of the things I've also noticed in the last few years is despite YouTube has had some negative stuff happen in the last 2 or so years, and arguably YouTube's sort of kind of going on a downward spiral. Y'all may know what I'm referencing there, maybe. And Twitch is kind of going upward. But the Gran Turismo community, really on Twitch and on YouTube, but especially on YouTube, because as of now that's still a bigger platform, is still going upward, despite YouTube not looking the best. I've noticed that in circa 2015-ish, I mean, a few years before, maybe a year or so after, there was basically no big Gran Turismo YouTubers. I mean, there is still YouTubers with maybe in the thousands range of subscribers, but I'm not even sure if in 2015 or so there was anybody with more than 10,000 subscribers. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I couldn't really find any back then. That's about when I made my channel also, but I was nowhere thinking I was ever going to get to 10,000 subscribers. I have more subscribers now than I ever thought I'd get. But the main reason I brought that up is because now in 2018, I would say there's at least 5 or 10 Gran Turismo main content channels that have over 10,000 subscribers. That's looking pretty good for a franchise that's been around for 20 plus years. Look at a game like Minecraft or something. I mean, that game has been popular for a really long time, and will probably stay popular for a really long time as well. But the amount of people actually doing that has dropped, despite the fact that it's actually more popular than Gran Turismo. And that kind of brings back to the initial thing that I was talking about with the communities. Y'all can make what you want of the Minecraft community, but I don't really think there's any denying that it's just downright more hectic than it was the first year or two when it came out. It's not exactly its heyday anymore. Which is exactly what you can say about Gran Turismo in terms of sales. But yet, the Gran Turismo community is flourishing. It's getting more popular in terms of more people joining more teams, YouTube channels getting bigger, and the overall events becoming more competitive, such as the actual things to get you to become a race car driver. From what I can tell, it's the community that's keeping Gran Turismo afloat more than anything. The Gran Turismo games haven't exactly been the dandiest in the last 2 of them. GT6 just came out at such a weird time, and there was no way it was going to be all that successful. And then GT Sport is just something completely different that didn't completely catch on. But yet, we're still here, with more teams than ever, more people following Gran Turismo on YouTube than ever, and we can see from the FI event starting up, it seems like there's more competition than ever. Which I'll get into the FI stuff more in specifics later. But in general, the main reason I made this video is to say that Gran Turismo seems to be okay in terms of how it's doing in terms of popularity, but it's never been better in terms of the community. There's always going to be some negative people out there, but generally the negative people don't really last all that long. They will eventually go away, because as long as we stay strong as the majority of the community being good, and we just kind of get them out of there in whatever means you feel necessary, there's always going to be new people who are negative and all that, but they don't last. It's the people here who's been around since the 2015 days or even before that will get rid of some of the people who haven't been too positive and haven't been there for a while. And then it will be the people who are just now starting that have a chance to spike up really well, because the negative people are starting to just die off. Gran Turismo, like I said, as a franchise has existed for a long time, And there has been staples in the community that have been there for a long time. It's about to be 7 years for some of those. That's pretty good. 7 years. Yeah. And then there's still the new people there, who are the new personalities that we haven't seen yet, or just starting to see, that get their own fan base there as well, of maybe that many more new people. And then as they get bigger, eventually they become some of the staples as well as time goes by. So Gran Turismo seems to have about a perfect mix of people and teams and all that who have stayed for a long time, and up-and-coming channels that have only been around for between a few months and a year or two. Obviously, it's still up to PD in general to make the games good enough to have the community stay around. But even at, I would say now is probably as negative as Gran Turismo's ever been in terms of game. Meaning the ratings are lower, the sales are lower, all that. The community still seems to be positive. And as long as that continues, I think for the most part we can rally around till eventually something good will happen. Whatever that good may be, maybe we get a really good crop of drivers from GT Sport that can become real race car drivers, and Gran Turismo can be considered that much more of a simulator because we've got so many good drivers from it. Or GT7. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. That would help the community a lot as well. Whatever route it ends up going, if the community stays as strong as it is right now, I would say Gran Turismo as a game will do that much better too. Because obviously a game can't exist without a community, and even though the sales aren't that high, as long as whoever did buy the game is strong enough to keep the game relevant, eventually maybe the sales will come. We've seen examples of this in the past, like Skate 3. That community has been there for a very long time, and the sales of that game continue to go up pretty rapidly compared to when it came out. And we're pretty close to getting a Skate 4 from what it's looking like. That community stayed relevant for long enough that the game developers figured out that they may as well make another one, because it's still popular even to this day. Now, I ain't saying PD ain't gonna make another Gran Turismo, but there may be a part of Gran Turismo that they're not quite thinking about yet. Yeah, y'all probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But if the community stays strong, I think it will come. There's been signs in the past of that happening with many different game developers. And PD seems to be as overall fan-oriented as any of them. PD's done quite a lot to help the fans throughout the years. And I see no reason that as long as the fans help themselves and stay strong as a community, that Gran Turismo won't help us back. So to sum it up, the Gran Turismo community is still as strong as ever, if not even stronger, and I see no reason that it can't get stronger in the future, which may make Gran Turismo series as a whole get stronger as well. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope y'all get the underlying points of the video as well. And I understand everyone has their own thing and their own reasons that others may not understand. But I feel like in general the community is accepting and overall well kept as it can be right now. So I think that's still overall positive no matter what happens. And that's most definitely worth a yeehaw.